Today I'm going to show you how to make my favorite squash soup. It's perfect for the holidays. It's got a great spice and it's really simple. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is preheat our oven to 375. Okay, the first thing that we have to do, and you're going to cut it in half lengthwise. They're really, really tough and they're pretty solid all the way down. Just try and make them as even as you can. Oh, I kind of destroyed this one, but that is perfectly fine. Next step, after we have all of our squashes, we are going to scoop out with a spoon the seeds and the pulp, just like a pumpkin. Doesn't have to be perfect, but try and at least get all the seeds out and as much of these strings out as you can. You're going to need about 2 baking sheets, depending on how big your squashes are. If you can fit them all on one, that's perfectly fine. I lined mine with tin foil for easy cleanup, but you can also use parchment paper or whatever. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our squash and prepare them for the oven. So what I'm using here is pure grapeseed oil, but you can use olive oil for this as well. Just gonna drizzle it onto the squash. That beeping is our oven preheated. We're gonna rub the squash completely with the oil. Now what Brandon is going to do, after I've rubbed all the oil all over the squash, he is going to salt and pepper them. And you're going to want to rub it on the outside of the skin as well. We are grinding some fresh cracked pepper onto our squash. And once they're all salt and peppered, then you're going to turn them cut side down onto your baking sheets. Oh, yeah, this is the one we broke earlier. You just place it back on and turn it over. We'll put these on the top, on the bottom. Now this is the long part of this process. We're going to hold timer for about an hour, but because these squash are on the larger side, it's probably going to be closer to an hour and a half, but I put it in for an hour and then you test it to see if it's done. Now while we're waiting for the squash to finish baking, we're gonna prepare the soup part of it. You need about 1 large onion per squash, but considering our squash are very large and these onions are quite small, I'm gonna use 4. So you're just gonna want to, depending on the kind of machine you have for processing, because this soup will need to be processed, because it will be chunky unless you do. You will either take your onions at this step, chop them coarsely, or like just quarter them or whatever, and stick them into a food processor just like this one, until they're about chunky but not a paste. And then you will put them into your soup pot and saute until they're brown. However, if you have one of these, which is an immersion blender, mine is from KitchenAid, you can wait till the end to blend everything together. So I'm just going to chop my onions, just like that. Now that we have our onions cut, now we must saute them. So I'm going to use pure grapeseed oil again, and I'm going to drizzle just about to cover the bottom of the pan. Going to add our onions and be careful of the splash. You're going to want to give it with a wooden spoon, give them a nice toss. It's been an hour, timer just went off, and we're going to check the squash, and now I'm going to show you how you can tell if they're done. Here. They're nice and golden brown on the outside, but the skin color doesn't matter. What we're looking for is really easily to be able to stick our fork into the skin, and this looks absolutely perfect. You don't want to have much effort, like, it should be nothing. Let's check our bottom one. Oh, absolutely perfect as well. So these are ready to come out. Come and look at our onions. I took our squash out of the oven, as you can tell, and I'll show you what to do with them next. But our onions, you want them to be about this color. You can see they're like a nice golden brown, semi-translucent. They're really, really gorgeous. So what we're gonna wanna do now is put some water into it. I've got a 4-cup measuring cup here, so I'm gonna fill it up and pour right into our onions. Water right into our onions, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna put about 12 cups in. All we have in here right now is our onions that we sauteed, along with the grapeseed oil, of course, and 12 cups of water. We're gonna bring this to a boil. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to boil, we're going to peel our squash. So, what you could do is you could flip them over and you can scoop the meat out with a spoon, or what I like to do is I like to just peel the skin off. The skin comes off really easily. And that way you get the most of the meat of the squash as possible. I'm just gonna wanna peel it from all of them. Our water and onions are boiling. So once they're boiling, we had 12 cups of water. So for every 2 cups you add a bouillon cube, so that equals 6 bouillon cubes. We're gonna add 6 bouillon cubes to our soup. Now that our squash is all peeled, as you can see, we just take bit by bit, like chunk by chunk, you just put them straight in the chunks. If you do not have an immersion blender like I have over here, you're going to want to take these chunks and put them into that food processor I showed you earlier and blend them until they're creamy. And then you add the creamy stuff into your soup. Okay, now that we've got all of our squash chunks and everything is inside of the soup pot, we're going to add salt. Probably going to add more salt as you continue to stir it, because you want to make it just about to your taste. And you're going to put pepper. Then you're going to add nutmeg, ground nutmeg. And you might add more. You're going to do this to taste. And my favorite ingredient for anything fall or winter is pumpkin pie spice. And you're going to sprinkle that in to the soup. And our next step is to blend it. So we take our blender, you're going to want to put it in and turn it on. Blend until creamy. How you want it to look. Very creamy and smooth. Just turning the heat down to low. Putting that aside and checking the consistency. Yeah, it's just about the thickness you want. If yours ends up thicker, just add more water. Obviously, I can't go much more because I am right at the top of this pot. I've reached it to capacity. And taste. It's pretty perfect. Heavy cream. A half a cup to about a cup of this.
I need to go ready.
It just adds a really nice, rich flavor. So just eyeball it. I think that's about perfect. And mix it in. Perfect. And now you're ready to serve it. Here, Dad.
All right. Let's go. Dig in, Brandon.
I hope you enjoy this recipe. It was a pleasure to make. I hope it is welcome in your family as it is in mine.